Breaking news as we come on the air. Moments ago, authorities revealing disturbing new details behind the explosion of that Cybertruck in Las Vegas. President-elect Donald Trump ordered to appear in court for sentencing, and the massive winter storm moving east. First, late today, the FBI and police revealing new details about the suspect that blew up a Cybertruck outside the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. New images of the driver, the highly decorated soldier leaving behind a haunting note, calling his actions a wake-up call. Mola Lenghi in Las Vegas. Following the deadly attack in New Orleans, the FBI issuing a nationwide bulletin about possible copycats. Investigators trying to determine if the terror suspect was radicalized before or during a trip to Egypt. What his half-brother is now saying tonight. And the rare explosive found in the IEDs. President-elect Donald Trump ordered back to court to face sentencing for his conviction in the hush money case here in New York. The judge launching a blistering attack on Trump for his, quote, disdain for the third branch of government. On Capitol Hill, the 119th Congress beginning with a dramatic first day. Speaker Mike Johnson putting down a conservative revolt to retain the gavel, taking what appeared to be an embarrassing loss, turning it into a victory with help from President-elect Trump. Tonight, the major winter storm moving from Kansas to the east, 1,500 miles long, 50 million people under winter weather alerts for snow, ice, and brutal cold. The new warning from the Surgeon General about the risks of alcohol and cancer. Health officials calling for alcoholic drinks to carry a warning label similar to cigarettes. New images of the fiery plane crash into a warehouse in California. The plane exploding in flames, fire and smoke inside the building. And President Biden honoring Army veterans and first responders for their courage under fire and for risking their lives to save others.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with David Muir.
Good evening, and thank you for being with us on a very busy Friday night. I'm Mary Bruce in for David. And we begin with major developments in the investigation into the man behind the Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas. Late today, police saying the driver left behind notes on his phone, detailing his actions and clues to a possible motive. Newly released surveillance video shows Army Green Beret Matthew Livelsberger at a Tesla charging station during his trip to Las Vegas. That chilling video of his final destination, the Trump Hotel. Authorities say Livelsberger died by suicide just before that blast. And they say in the notes he left behind, he railed against the United States, but he held no animosity toward the president-elect. And he wrote, quote, "This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call." ABC's Mola Lenghi leads us off in Las Vegas again tonight.
Tonight, authorities saying the highly decorated Green Beret suspected of using explosives to blow up that Cybertruck outside of the Trump Hotel in Las Vegas left behind notes found on his cell phone, providing clues to a possible motive.
And in there, you can read a couple of the excerpts. "We are the United States of America, the best country, people to ever exist. But right now, we are terminally ill and headed towards collapse. This was not a terrorist attack. It was a wake-up call. Americans only pay attention to spectacles and violence. What better way to get my point across than a stunt with fireworks and explosives? Why did I personally do it now? I need to cleanse my mind of the brothers I've lost and relieve myself of the burden of the lives I took."
Officials confirming that 37-year-old Matthew Livelsberger died by suicide just before the explosion. Master Sergeant Livelsberger was on approved leave from his base in Germany. A senior U.S. official telling ABC News there had been no red flags. Authorities releasing these new surveillance images showing him at a Tesla charging station as he made his way from Colorado to New Mexico, Arizona, and Nevada. That Cybertruck rented via the app Turo. Livelsberger pulling into the hotel valet at 7:35 a.m. Wednesday before pulling out, returning an hour later. And then, 17 seconds later, the explosion. 7 bystanders injured. Sources say Livelsberger was divorced and had recently remarried, his wife reportedly telling authorities he'd been out of the house in Colorado Springs since Christmas following a dispute over infidelity. And while investigators say they found those notes railing against the condition of the United States, they say the soldier held no animosity towards President-elect Trump.
We've found that the subject held no animosity towards the president-elect. The Army indicates that he likely suffered from PTSD, and we are also aware that there were potential other family issues or personal grievances in his own life that may have been contributing factors.
Investigators scouring the suspect's background. FBI and local police searching this townhome in Colorado Springs. Neighbors stunned.
He seemed normal. His wife is very nice. They just had a baby.
Well, Mary, late today, the sheriff here in Las Vegas saying they are aware of a podcast claiming to have a letter from Matthew Livelsberger mentioning recent drone sightings in the Northeast and claiming that he was being followed by federal investigators. Now, authorities say they're not 100% certain it came from him, but they do believe it did. Mary?
Mola Lengi with the disturbing new details tonight. Mola, thank you. Now to the nationwide warning in the wake of the deadly truck attack in New Orleans. The FBI urging law enforcement across the country to be vigilant for possible copycat crimes. Investigators today back at the suspect's home in Houston, finding bomb-making materials there and a rare explosive in the homemade IEDs. And tonight, the trip he made to Egypt in 2023. Was he radicalized before he went or while he was there? ABC's Trevor Alt with the latest from New Orleans tonight.
Tonight, new developments in the investigation into how truck-ramming terrorist Shamsuddin Jabbar became radicalized. His half-brother Abdur tells ABC News in 2023, Jabbar traveled to Egypt for about a month, telling his family he was going because it was cheap and beautiful. These photos show jewelry, tea, and other gifts Jabbar brought back with him. And investigators are now trying to determine if Jabbar had been radicalized prior to that trip or if it may have marked the start of his descent into Islamic terror. Sources confirmed to ABC News the FBI found a significant amount of bomb-making materials inside the suspect's North Houston home. And investigators say those unexploded IEDs found in coolers Jabbar placed before the attack were made with a very rare explosive compound. And ABC News has now learned of a new FBI bulletin warning the nation's 18,000 law enforcement agencies to remain vigilant of potential copycat or retaliatory attacks inspired by this attack. On Bourbon Street today, officers showing that heightened vigilance, investigating a suspicious bag, taking it away without incident. And tonight, we're learning more of the stories of the victims. Kareem Badawi, a freshman at the University of Alabama, his family and friends remembering him as a talented athlete known for his hard work and team spirit. And former Princeton football player Tiger Besh, his little brother Jack, on his final moments.
His eyes were closed and he was on a machine, but I know he could hear us. God kept his heartbeat beating for a reason, and I believe it was so that me and my family could tell him goodbye. God was calling him home to heaven.
And Mary, President Biden says he has spoken with many of the families of those 14 people killed, and the White House says he and the First Lady will be traveling here to New Orleans on Monday to grieve with the community. Mary.
Okay, Trevor, thank you. Next tonight, the first major winter storm of the new year is now on the way, just as the last wave of holiday travelers return home. Ahead of that storm, a fast-moving round of lake-effect snow, multiple wrecks on I-81 near Pulaski, New York. Neighborhoods buried under 2 to 3 feet of snow, with more on the way. But the bigger threat beginning tomorrow evening across 1,500 miles from Kansas to the Atlantic coast. Meteorologist Jeff Smith of our New York station WABC is tracking it all. Jeff.
And Mary, first of all, that lake effect snow will continue into the weekend, depositing 2 to 3 feet in spots. We even have a couple of snow showers from Maryland to South Jersey this evening, but it's all a precursor to this first major winter storm of 2025 that'll be developing over the plains Saturday night and then kind of streaking east along the I-70 corridor during the day on Sunday. A wide swath of 4 to 10 inches of snow, Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, into parts of, say, Indiana and Kentucky. Severe storms to the south on Sunday, Houston, New Orleans, all the way up to Memphis, the possibility of tornadoes. This all reaches the East Coast by Monday morning. It's a tricky morning commute. Washington, D.C. up to Baltimore, up to Philadelphia, potentially several inches of snow in all of those cities. Icy conditions, Virginia, North Carolina, and then behind it, we'll call it a pocket of the polar vortex diving off to the south. Sub-zero wind chills in this bitter Arctic chill will continue into the middle part of the month. Mary?
Jeff Smith from our New York station WABC, thank you. Next tonight, President-elect Donald Trump ordered to appear in court for sentencing related to the hush money payments he made ahead of the 2016 election, just 10 days before he's set to be sworn in as president. The judge refusing to throw out his felony convictions, but saying under the circumstances he would spare Trump time in jail. But the judge is blasting Trump for his lack of respect for judges, juries, and, quote, the justice system as a whole. ABC senior investigative correspondent Aaron Katersky outside the courthouse tonight.
Tonight, Donald Trump is due in a Manhattan courtroom to be sentenced 10 days before he's sworn in as the next president of the United States. In a surprise order, Judge Juan Merchan ordering Trump to appear in person or virtually January 10th, 1 week from today. Trump was convicted in May of 34 felony counts of falsifying business records related to a 2016 hush payment to porn star Stormy Daniels. The judge called it premeditated and continuous deception by the leader of the free world. But Trump, who stood trial during the campaign, repeatedly trashed the case.
Nothing like this has ever happened before. There's never been anything like it. This is an outrage that this case was brought.
The judge sharply criticizing Trump's behavior during the trial, calling out his disdain for the third branch of government and his lack of respect for judges, juries, grand juries, and the justice system as a whole. Trump's lawyers have argued sentencing the president-elect would pose unconstitutional burdens on his ability to run the country, and tonight they're pledging to ask an appeals court to stop the sentencing. Trump's criminal conviction carried the possibility of 4 years behind bars, but the judge said that is no longer a practicable recommendation. He will spare Trump jail time and instead sentence him to an unconditional discharge.
So let's get right to Aaron Katersky at the courthouse here in New York. So, Aaron, what does this sentence, this unconditional discharge, mean for Trump?
It would effectively be a mark on his record, Mary. The judge said he wanted to balance the sanctity of the jury's verdict with the duties of the president. So while Trump would face no real punishment, the stain of a criminal conviction would remain. Mary?
Okay, Aaron, thank you. Now to Capitol Hill in the dramatic first day of the 119th Congress. Mike Johnson appearing to lose the first vote to remain Speaker of the House, but ultimately putting down a conservative revolt with some behind-the-scenes help from the president-elect. ABC's Jay O'Brien is on the Hill.
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Tonight, Mike Johnson re-elected Speaker of the House in dramatic fashion. Heading into the chamber today, Johnson could only afford to lose the support of one Republican. Thomas Massey of Kentucky already making it clear he was a firm no.
What does it say if you lose on the first ballot, Mr. Speaker?
It says nothing. It's part of the process.
But the Speaker did have the support of President-elect Donald Trump, who said a win for Johnson would be a big affirmation for his presidency and a big win for the Republican Party. At least 17 Republicans, though, on the fence, despite Trump's endorsement. Just before 1 p.m., the clerk calling the roll. Massey, as expected, voting against the Speaker.
Massey.
Tom Emmer.
Then Republicans Ralph Norman of South Carolina and Keith Self following suit.
Self.
Johnson appearing to not have enough votes, huddling with supporters. The Speaker then making a personal appeal, taking Keith Self to a private room off the House floor. Other Republicans working the phones, including President-elect Trump, who we've learned directly spoke with the two key Republicans, urging them to get in line and back Johnson. Self telling us they had a lively discussion. The Speaker then returning to the floor, shaking hands, and then, in a remarkable turn of events,
Mr. Norman Johnson.
The holdouts changing their votes, re-electing Johnson.
Mr. Self Johnson.
Congressman Norman saying Trump asked why he voted against Johnson.
We needed to impress on Mike Johnson that we're serious about budget, we're serious about the border, we're serious, and is he going to fight? Was taking another hour in here worth it? Absolutely. I would do it all over again.
And Mary, tonight, Donald Trump celebrating what he said was an unprecedented show of support for Johnson. But despite holding on to his gavel, the Speaker still has a razor-thin House Republican majority and hardliners in his own party watching closely as he tries to deliver on Trump's ambitious agenda. Mary?
Yeah, those divisions in the party still remain. Jay, thank you. Now to the new warning from the U.S. Surgeon General about the link between cancer and alcohol. Health officials calling for alcoholic beverages to carry new warning labels like those on cigarettes. Here's ABC's Diane Macedo.
Tonight, the U.S. Surgeon General is calling for new labels on alcoholic beverages, warning every American who drinks of a potential cancer risk.
The evidence has been building for years about the connection between alcohol and cancer risk.
It's been nearly 4 decades since labels were added to beer, wine, and liquor, warning of the danger for pregnant women and drivers. But moderate drinking, 1 drink a day for women and 2 for men, has long been considered safe.
People did say, hey, a couple glasses a day might be okay. Alcohol in moderation, no big deal. But the research is changing.
Newer research shows alcohol raises the risk of at least 7 cancers, including liver, breast, and esophageal. And the Health and Human Services Department says alcohol contributes to 100,000 cancer cases and 20,000 related deaths every year.
My message to individuals is just to recognize that when it comes to alcohol and cancer risk, less drinking means less cancer risk.
Still, some question whether changing the labels would change drinking habits.
It might make people stop and, take a second thought about it. Just like cigarettes, it's not going to stop everybody from smoking. It's not going to stop everybody from drinking.
The incoming Trump administration has not said whether a new Surgeon General would support updating the warning labels. And any new label would require approval from Congress, which could be an uphill battle. The beverage industry spends tens of millions of dollars every year lobbying Congress, Mary.
Diane Macedo with the wake-up call from the Surgeon General tonight. Thank you. Ceremonies to honor former President Jimmy Carter begin tomorrow morning. A motorcade will carry him through his hometown of Plains, Georgia, to the Carter Center in Atlanta, where he will lie in repose. On Tuesday, he will lie in state at the U.S. Capitol until his state funeral at the Washington National Cathedral on Thursday. Former President Carter will be buried back in Plains alongside Rosalind, his wife of 77 years. ABC News will carry live coverage celebrating Jimmy Carter's life and legacy. Join us tomorrow morning right here on ABC. And when we come back, Apple's $95 million settlement, the lawsuit accusing Siri of eavesdropping, and new images of that deadly plane crash into a building, the plane slamming through the roof, erupting into a fireball. Video from inside the warehouse, what authorities are now saying. Tonight, new images emerging of that deadly plane crash into a furniture warehouse in Fullerton, California. The small plane seen just seconds before crashing through the roof. It exploded into a fireball. The pilot and his 16-year-old daughter killed. Smoke and flames inside the building. 19 people were injured. Authorities say the plane went down shortly after takeoff. The pilot calling for an immediate return to the airport. And when we come back, Apple agreeing to a $95 million settlement. Siri accused of eavesdropping. To the index tonight, Apple settling a $95 million lawsuit over claims the voice-activated assistant Siri violated users' privacy. Customers say Siri recorded conversations after being unintentionally turned on. That information allegedly shared with third parties, including advertisers. Users could receive $20 for up to 5 Siri-enabled devices. Apple denies any wrongdoing in agreeing to the settlement, which is awaiting a judge's approval. And when we come back, President Biden honoring American veterans and first responders for their bravery and sacrifice. Finally tonight, courage and sacrifice on display at the White House today. America strong. At the White House today, President Biden honoring civilian heroes who put their own lives at risk to save others with the Medal of Valor.
They saved children. They saved people in serious distress. They jumped into freezing water. They did it all.
Like Sergeant Tu Tran of the Lincoln, Nebraska Police Department, honored for saving a woman who was drowning by jumping into a frigid pond.
They literally put their lives at risk, some of them at the point that you wonder how they could have had the nerve to do it.
5 officers with the Nashville Police recognized for running towards gunfire to take down an active shooter at Covenant Elementary School last March. Tonight in the East Room of the White House, the president also honoring 7 U.S. Army veterans with the Medal of Honor, the nation's highest military decoration.
These are genuine to their core heroes. Heroes of different ranks, different positions, and even different generations. But heroes who all went above and beyond the call of duty. Heroes who all deserve our nation's highest and oldest military recognition, the Medal of Honor.
Private First Class Kenneth David risked his own life in Vietnam, drawing enemy fire away from the wounded and toward himself. He's the only one of today's 7 Medal of Honor recipients still living. and Korean War veteran Richard Cavazos, then Lieutenant Cavazos, who went on to become the Army's first Hispanic four-star general.
It's up to us to give this medal meaning, to keep fighting for one another, for each other, to keep defending everything these heroes fought for and many of them died for.
And we thank them for their service. I'm Mary Bruce. Good night.
Thank you for making World News Tonight with David Muir, America's most watched newscast.